When the solar flare hit, it didn't discriminate between the stations orbiting Mars or the colony below. Dr. James Morrison watched his screens go dark, watched the power systems cascade into emergency shutdown, watched the life support countdown timers blink red in the darkness. 42 people in the station, 8 hours of oxygen in the backup systems. Engineering to command, came the strained voice of Chief Engineer Torres. We're in lockdown. Solar radiation is too intense for EVA, and I can't get the external repairs to the solar collectors from inside. Without power, we're on battery reserves only. At current consumption rate, we've got 8 hours before life support fails. Morrison's mind raced through the algorithms of survival he'd learned over 20 years in the space program. 8 hours. It might as well have been 8 minutes. That's when he heard Sarah's voice from the colony below, crackling through the radiation-resistant deep-frequency emergency channel. Station 3, we're reading your power loss. We're sending help. Morrison wanted to laugh. What could 40 miners and scientists in a pressurized bunker 200 kilometers away do to help an orbital station? But he'd learned never to underestimate Mars-born humans. Sarah, negative, he transmitted back. The radiation storm is still lethal up here. EVA is suicide. We're not doing EVA, Sarah replied. We're doing something dumber. What arrived 30 minutes later was something nobody had ever attempted before. A jury-rigged atmospheric lander that looked like it had been assembled by someone in a fever dream. Used mining equipment welded into a frame designed to carry a rocket engine salvaged from an emergency ascent vehicle. The engineering was brilliant in its desperation and terrifying in its audacity. Sarah herself piloted the insane contraption, riding it like she was commanding a mechanical beast rather than flying it. Technically, the radiation would cook anyone exposed during launch, but the reinforced shielding in the mining equipment provided just enough protection for the journey if she kept the flight duration under 20 minutes. I'm going to punch through the radiation envelope at 30 degrees inclination, Sarah transmitted as she fired the engine. I'll be in the worst of it for 7 minutes. Once I'm through, I'll rendezvous with Station 3, dock at the auxiliary port, and we can stabilize your systems. You can't survive 7 minutes in that radiation, Morrison said, something cold settling in his stomach. Probably not, Sarah agreed. Her voice was calm, not reckless, but resigned to necessity. But you can't get down, and we can't send up another rescue. So here we go. The whole colony watched her ascent on their emergency screens, watched as she climbed through the radiation envelope that had crippled their station. Her heart rate, transmitted to the colony medical bay, jumped to impossible numbers. Alarms screamed. Chief Medical Officer Reeves was muttering prayers to deities she didn't believe in. Sarah felt it as a burning sensation in her bones, as if something was slowly cooking her from the inside out. Her suit's dosimeter was screaming warnings that she silenced with an effort of will. 7 minutes. She could endure 7 minutes of anything. Humans had endured worse. Sarah thought of her grandmother, who'd survived the cancer wars of the 22nd century, who'd lived through the drought of the American Southwest. Humans were built from the bones of survivors. She punched through the radiation envelope at minute 6 and 48 seconds, gasping in the relative safety of the station's shadow, where Earth's magnetosphere offered some protection. Status? Morrison asked. Still conscious, Sarah confirmed, her voice rough. Radiation exposure nominal for a fatal dose, but I'm not the dying type. Docking in 3 minutes. She flew the decrepit mining lander to the station's auxiliary port like it was a fighter craft, like she did this every day. The docking sequence was flawless. The airlock cycled. She stumbled into the station, and Morrison had his medical officer waiting. You're going to be sick, Reeves said clinically, scanning her with the portable radiation detector. Nausea, vomiting, hair loss probable. We'll manage it as best we can. Right now, what did you bring? Sarah pushed a sealed container forward. Emergency power cells, harvested from 3 of our mining vehicles. They're not ideal, but they'll give you enough juice for life support and minimal operations for 4 days. That should be enough for the radiation storm to pass, and for you to assess external damage." "This is insane," Morrison said, but he was already moving to the engineering bay. "You'll suffer from acute radiation poisoning." "Already am?" Sarah said, her grin fierce through the pain. "But I'm not suffering alone anymore, and your people aren't dying on my watch because some celestial furnace threw a tantrum." The power cells integrated into the system imperfectly, human engineering at its most improvised, but they worked. Life support systems came back online. The oxygen ceased its countdown towards zero. The station stabilized. 4 days later, when the solar radiation had dissipated enough for an evacuation craft to arrive from the colony, they found Sarah in the medical bay, very sick, but very much alive. Her prognosis wasn't pretty. She'd absorbed radiation at levels that meant shortened lifespan, probable cancer, years of complications. But she was alive, and everyone in that station lived because she'd chosen to accept a slow death rather than let them experience a quick one. When Morrison visited her in the colony hospital, he found Sarah staring out at the rust-red landscape of Mars. "You know what the funny thing is?" Sarah said quietly. "Out there on Earth, people think we came to Mars for glory, for science, for the resources. But Mars teaches you something real quick. You come here to test what you're made of. You come here and you get stripped down to your core, and you find out if you're really human or if you were just pretending in the comfortable spaces of Earth." She looked at Morrison. "And humans? We're made of stubborn and brave and willing to accept consequences for our choices. That's what Earth forgot. That's what Mars remembered about us." Morrison thought about this. He thought about Sarah piloting a jury-rigged mining lander through lethal radiation to save 40 strangers. He thought about what it meant to be human, and how sometimes the most profound victories weren't against enemies, but against the impossible itself. "Thank you," he said simply. "We're on Mars," Sarah replied. "We're all we have. That makes us family." When she finally recovered 6 months later, or as recovered as someone could be with radiation poisoning, Sarah led the effort to engineer suit upgrades that would protect against solar radiation surges. She led the initiative to network Earth's orbital stations with Mars colony resources. She became a symbol of something that Earth had nearly forgotten, that humanity's greatest strength wasn't in weapons or wealth, but in the willingness to sacrifice for each other. The universe contained many species with superior strength and superior weapons. But the universe had never seen a species that loved as fiercely or sacrificed as readily as humans did when they chose to. That, Sarah understood, was the real reason why Mars mattered.